Hello everyone, I'm Mark Balbus, the Scouting for Food Chair for the New Horizons District of the Greater St. Louis Area Council, Boy Scouts of America. Today I'm going to show you how you can use a custom Google map to assign Scouting for Food areas to your units. First I'm going to show you my district map so you can get an idea of what you can do. Then I'm going to show you how you can create and share your own map. Let's take a look at the New Horizons Scouting for Food map. So I'm going to go to a tab here and navigate to google.com/mymaps. And that's going to take me directly to my page where I've got my custom maps. And here's a tile that's showing me a custom map for the New Horizons Scouting for Food area. So if I click on it, it opens up the map. And what you see is basically your ordinary Google Maps. All of the capabilities are there that are in the normal Google Maps. But now you can see additional things that are on the map that I put there that's visible to me and anybody that I share this custom map with. Just like Google Maps, this is the entire world, so you can zoom in and zoom out, making the map as big or as small as you want. I'm on a Macintosh computer, so I'm using 3 fingers on my trackpad to drag this around, and 2 fingers zooms in and out. That may be different on your computer depending on what operating system you're using and what type of computer, trackpad, or mouse that you're using. Regardless of that, what you can see is the area that is the New Horizons District is broken up into different regions, and these different regions have different colors. So each region corresponds to one of our units, and if I click on one of the regions, I get a pop-up that tells me the area number. So all of these areas are numbered just for easy reference, and then the units that are assigned to cover that area. These areas are different sizes and different shapes, and when we get into creating your own map, I'll explain all the reasons for that. The size, though, is really dependent on 2 things. One is the size of the unit. You don't want to give too much area to smaller units, but it's also dependent on the density of houses. And so if you zoom in on Google Maps, you can see that in areas that are closer to the city, the density of houses goes up. So in here you can see things are very dense. So even though it's a smaller area, it's a lot of bags to distribute and food to pick up. If I go farther west in the city, so out to Wildwood and in that area, what you can see is the density of houses goes down dramatically. Also, these houses can be harder to get to because of long driveways and wooded areas. And so even though these areas are large, in fact, there's not a lot of bag drop-offs that happen here just because there's not very many houses to get to, or they're too hard to get to. There can be 1 or more units that are assigned per area. So as I showed you, sometimes a pack and a troop will work together, or if you've got 2 small packs, sometimes I will assign them to the same area and ask them to work together. Either that, or I'll split the area and give them each a section, but by having them collaborate and work together, they can figure out the best way to cover that area. The other thing that I do is I'll add in notes about the unit or what I've learned from previous years about the area and what to, maybe it's harder to get to the houses, or they don't have much luck collecting food, or any number of feedback that comes from those packs and troops and crews that are covering the different areas. Yeah, if I think it's going to impact how I assign the maps the next year, then I'll put the notes in here as well. So here I've got one. This used to have a second unit, the pack 567, but they didn't recharter, so I ended up just assigning it solely to the troop. I probably shrunk it down too, because just having the troop do it by itself is pretty tough. The other thing that you'll see on the map is markers for our different collection centers. So for New Horizons, a lot of our collection centers are firehouses. We do have one food pantry as well. But these all mark the locations of the different collection centers. You can see where we have more densely populated area, there are more collection centers, and then as we get out to the less densely populated western area of St. Louis County, there's fewer collection centers just because you're going to pick up less food in those areas. And then I can put in these markers information about those collection centers. So if they have hours, special hours they're working, or details about how hard or easy it is to get into and out of that collection center, any historical information I may put into these markers to capture it for the future. And again, I'll show you how to build your own custom map to take advantage of this. The other thing that you'll see is on the left, we have a listing of all of the different areas and the units that are assigned to those areas. And in fact, that's just showing the same thing that's in this pop-up dialog. And they're divided, in our case, by school districts. So we have Webster and Brentwood. We have Kirkwood that has a lot of units. The area north of 40, which is Parkway, then Manchester, Baldwin, Chesterfield, Eureka, and Wildwood. So I said school districts, but I should have said the different cities. Okay, so that is what we do with our map. And then, of course, we have a whole activity of informing our different units of what area they have. And we do that through Roundtable, we do that through email blasts, but essentially instead of trying to tell every unit what area they have to cover and handing out a custom map to every unit, which is what we used to do when we did this manually, now we can just share in a view-only mode. We can share this map. Occasionally I'll have a unit I'll have a unit that's actually assigned to multiple areas. This might happen if a unit drops, and then I try to find a larger unit that perhaps has more ability to cover more area, and I'll assign it a secondary area. And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end, some of the different problems that we come up with. But by sharing this map in a view-only mode, everybody gets to see not just their areas, but the areas of the units around them. If there's an issue with boundaries and territories with another unit, they either work through me or they can work directly with the other unit. The other aspect of this is if, as I zoom in, you can see that we're working hard to put these boundaries along either major roads or between different subdivisions so that it's really clear what the unit has to cover. If it's on a major road, they're only covering their side of the major road. The other unit on the other side covers the other side of that major road. Or the other way is, for example, here we have a whole subdivision. We want to make sure that subdivision is in one area so that people don't have to go driving all over the place, entering a subdivision, doing half of it, and then driving to some other subdivision and doing half of that subdivision. So it's a lot of common sense in drawing the boundaries, just trying to make it easy for the scouts and their parents and leaders so that they don't have to do a lot of driving around. Now I'm going to show you how to create a custom map from scratch. So we're going to navigate away from our New Horizons map, and I'll just go back to My Maps. I'm going to click on Create a New Map, and now Google's doing all the work. Remember that the maps don't have boundaries. You're literally looking at the entire world. So you just navigate in to the right city, which isn't Denver. And we're back in St. Louis now. the first thing we're going to do is we're going to title our map. So let's call this the test map for scouting for food. You would probably name it after your district. So the New Horizons Scouting for Food map, something like that. And then remember we had that collection of different cities over here that we had our areas subdivided under. So those are actually layers, and there's a default layer that's created for you. So I'm going to rename this to be the Kirkwood layer. My computer's trying to be helpful for me. I'm going to add another layer for Webster Groves. And I'm not going to recreate everything, but just to give you an idea. And then let's add one more for Parkway. Yeah, not really Parkway Baldwin. I'm still thinking in terms of school districts from the earlier recording. Okay, so now what we want to do is we'll select one of these layers. So you see the little blue bar here. I've selected the Kirkwood layer. I can go in to Kirkwood, which I should know where it is because that's where I live. And if I want to create an area for a unit, then I'm going to come up to this draw a line icon and click on it. And I'm going to say add a line or shape. Now if you go out into YouTube, you can find all kinds of videos showing you how to create custom maps in Google Maps, and the ones I found were all around creating routes. We don't want to create a route, we want to create a shape. And so I'm going to choose create a line or a shape. I'm going to pick an area that I think is a good area for one unit, and I'm going to tap on my trackpad or click with your mouse to start drawing the shape. And like I said before, I want to choose good boundaries for the shape, but don't worry, because if I get this wrong, I can always edit the shape. And so I chose a nice square area. And then to finish off the shape, I need to click on that original dot that I was on. So now it shows polygon 1. If I didn't close the shape, it would say line 1, and then what I'm about to show you wouldn't work. So this is area 001, and it's going to be for troop 1, 2, 3, 4. No such troop in our district. Okay, and now you see that it's just showing up with the boundary, and it's shaded gray. So what I want to do is I'm going to click on the fill here, the fill icon, and I'm going to choose a color to fill it in. So I chose orange, and I can adjust the transparency of the orange. So I can make it completely opaque, in which case you can't see the streets. If I make it completely transparent, you don't see the color at all. So there's some sweet spot in here where you can see the roads and you can see the color to make it easier to understand what area that unit's responsible for. And remember, we're going to be sharing this with all of our units, so they're all going to see this. And so that area is defined. And now if I want to share another area or define another area, I'll add a line or a shape. I will click in the corners. Now this is a little bit maybe more tricky because it's not square or rectangular, so I'm going to put some extra dots in here. And I'm doing it kind of crudely, because I'm going to come back to it in just a second. So this is area 002, and it's for pack 1, 2, 3, 4. I probably would, I would probably not draw the areas and assign the units at the same time. I would, if I was drawing this from scratch, I would figure out the units first and how big they were, and then try to come up with areas that seemed appropriate for them near where those units are actually located. Okay, so in case you're wondering, if you lose that pop-up, you just click back inside the shape and it comes up again. If you click outside the shape, it goes away. So I'm going to choose a different fill color here, and I'm going to give it a little bit more transparency, or a little bit less transparency, so it stands out. And now let's zoom in and see what we've done. So you can see that I probably did the wrong thing, went to the wrong road. I really meant to go to Geyer. So I'm going to take these dots and I'm going to move them. And then you'll also notice that so I dropped this dot and I dropped this dot, but there's a dot in the middle that I did not drop. Anytime you have two defined markers like this, Google Maps automatically puts another one in the middle of that straight line so that you can drag it. And now that I've done that, you see that there's another one that's shown up here. So if I really want to get detailed, I can make as many of these dots as I want, but I will caution you from experience that if you make too many dots and then later you want to change the boundary, now you have to either go in and delete those dots or you have to move all of those dots. So it becomes a little bit of a maintenance nightmare. So do as many dots as you need to make sure the area is clear for the unit so they know what they're up to, but I would not go in and define dots all along this this line here, or try to make a perfect circle somewhere. I would just do it crudely, or you're going to create problems for yourself. Control Z is your friend, or Command Z if you're on a map. It's really easy to, for example, want to drag the map to move it, but if you have the area selected and you start dragging on that area, then it moves that area. And I do that all the time. I'm on a Mac, so undo is Command Z. I hit that and it goes back. So Command Z or Control Z is your best friend. In this case, I use the technique of defining the boundary along a major road. If we go out west, where things are less populated, now what happens is it's harder to find major roads, and what you might do instead is do things by subdivision. So for example, if we look in here, right, probably you want to encapsulate this area. So I might do an area, let's choose the Baldwin area, which this may be farther west than Baldwin, but that's okay for illustrative purposes. I may do something like start an area. I want to go between these subdivisions, and then come along here, and I am making this up as I go along, but I think you can see I'm basically trying to, in fact, I think what I'll do is probably come through here instead. Makes a lot more sense. I'm going to have to go back and clean up anyway. So here's area 51 for hack. But like I showed you before with the dots, I can change the boundary, so I wasn't worried that I screwed it up because I'll just make it what I want it to be. So I gave it some color and transparency, but now I'm probably going to break it, it looks like here, along here, and then bring these out. See why I tell you not to put too many dots in the way? I can right-click on a dot and delete it, and that'll make things easier in the future if I don't need all these dots. And so there I can make it clear that, you know, they're basically doing this whole neighborhood. So then the other thing to do is to put down the markers for your collection centers. And so that's a different thing. You want to add this marker. So again, first you're going to make sure that you've chosen the right layer, or alternately, you could have the collection centers in their own layer. And in fact, that's what we did for New Horizons. So I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to label it collection centers. I'm going to make sure it's selected, which it is because I see the blue bar over here. And now I'm going to place our collection centers. And again, these aren't our real collection centers. I'm just going to place a point somewhere. So this is Fire Station 1, or whatever it is. Give it the right name, Kirkwood Fire Station. I can put information in here about that fire station. Driveway is one way, something like that. Don't block entry to fire engines bay. So we want to always make sure, I know with our fire stations, you don't want to get in the way of the firemen if they're actually going out to a fire. So never have something parked in their way or have cars coming in and out in front of the fire engines, because if they need to get out, they need to get out right away. So here we've got now our collection centers. We can drop these markers, and we can also give them their own color. So if we want them to stand out, so we can say, hey, we're going to make all of our fire collection centers a certain color. We can even give them its own icon so it really stands out. So what we used was the house icon, again, because it looks a little bit like a fire station. And it stands out from all the other icons that are already on the map from Google. Okay, so now you've made the map. Now you need to share it with other people. And so you can do one of two things. You can either share it directly, or you can hit the preview button, and that shows you what your map will look like to the people that you share it with. So it's going to come up looking like this. You see that it's making the zoom so that you see all of the areas and items that you've defined. So we've got our fire station and our 3 areas that we've defined. They're seeing the different layers with the information about them. And then once we like this, we can go back and edit our map if we see things that we missed or we want to change. Then you click on share. You're going to want to share via email. And it says you're going to have to make it public before posting or embedding this map, so I can change the permissions. And we'll make it anyone with the link can view the map. I don't want to make it edit, because then you might have units decide that, oh, their area is too big, and they're going to edit the map and make their area smaller. Not maliciously, but thinking that that's what they're supposed to do because you're giving them an editable map and they're doing the hard work for you. So keep it as viewer and then click on copy link. And now you can paste that link into an email. You can put it on your Scouting for Food website. You can put it in your district newsletter, wherever you are, however you're distributing information about Scouting for Food, you can put that link in. And we're done. We've made our map. We've shared it. The only thing left to do is to talk a little bit about some lessons learned. Let's go back to the New Horizons map. So this was our test map. I'm going to hit back. Here's our New Horizons map. For 2023, I'm going to copy this map, and I'm not going to share it with the same people because I want to make sure that it's the new unit leaders for Scouting for Food. So I'm going to just say OK. So it's going to make a copy for me that I can share with others. Okay, so it took a little bit. So now I have a copy of our map from last year, but as we all know, we have units that drop, we have units that get added, some of them lose scouts, some of them gain scouts. So I thought I would just talk about some of the lessons learned that I've had. So first of all, dropped units and new units. Hard lesson I learned is that make sure a unit has really dropped before you remove them from your map. I had a unit that, yes, in November was still in rechartering hell, and so they weren't on my official list, but they actually were a functioning unit, and I dropped them, and then they came to me asking why they weren't participating in Scouting for Food, and I had to find a new area because I'd already given away their old area. So there's a couple of things you can do. One is with a given area, if, before you actually start altering your map, if a unit drops, find out what new units there are and see if you can just assign them to that area from the dropped unit. That's the fastest, easiest thing to do. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of times the new units are in already nicely densely populated areas, and the dropped units seem to be far from the new units, and you don't want to make a new unit drive a long way to get to their Scouting for Food area. Units really like to work their home area, so the more you can do that, the better. You can't always do that. If the unit's dropped and there's just nothing else you can do, then what I will do is, and you see all the dots here, so if I had to change that shape, it would be tough. I'll delete that area, and then I'll take the other areas and I will, let me zoom in a little bit to make it easier. I'll just try to redistribute the space by moving the dots. So I might move this one out a little bit, and then I'll come over to this green, and I'll look at if, moving this out, and I'll just try to cover the area with the units that are surrounding it. I will look to see that those units actually have the ability, that they're not a 5 scout unit or something like that, but within reason, I'll try to redistribute that area. And I'm undoing this because obviously I deleted a unit that's still an active unit, and I don't want to get confused when I start using this for 2023. If you have a unit that you're adding, one of the things that you can do is, in addition to seeing if they can take the place of a dropped unit, new units tend to be smaller, so maybe find where they meet and see if you can have them collaborate with an existing unit that might be struggling to cover its area. So you can either just introduce the unit leaders to each other and ask them to work together, or you can actually divide the area on the map, and you would do that just by first manipulating the area down to whichever, half of it, and then adding a new shape to cover the other half. How to deal with questions about the map. So I will get phone calls for different reasons. One of the reasons is a unit leader who says that some of the area that they've been assigned to is not safe for their scouts to be handing out bags. Maybe it's near a busy street. It could be that the houses are far back in wooded areas, and so it would be difficult to keep track of the scouts as they're handing out the bags. Whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. At least to me, my response to the unit leader is always that they're responsible for the safety of their scouts. They should use their discretion. Whatever they think want to do, we'll support them with it. If they don't think something is safe, don't do it. Even if scouting rules says that you should do it, ultimately it's the unit leaders that are responsible for the safety of their scouts. If they don't, if they don't want their scouts to do something, if they don't think it's safe, back them up. Tell them that's fine. Don't do that. Another common complaint I get is that an area is too big. The unit can't cover the entire area. I think my initial reaction to something like that, which is the wrong reaction, would be to tell them, oh, please try. We're trying to get all the food. I don't do that. What I tell them is basically, I understand scouting is shrinking. We have fewer units. We have fewer scouts. It's getting harder and harder to cover those areas. And just like with safety, I don't second guess that unit leader. I don't try to guilt them into it or make them feel comfortable with something that they're not comfortable with. What I do tell them is do as much as your unit can, and please make sure that wherever they drop off bags, that they come back the next week and they pick up those bags. So don't distribute bags and then don't pick them up. So they really need to, when they're thinking about how much of their area they can cover and which areas, they need to be thinking about both weekends. One not complaint, but great feedback I got. I had one unit last year that told me their area was too small and that they could cover more ground, which was awesome because I gave them one of the empty areas that I was struggling to fill from a dropped unit. And I paired them up with another unit that had complained to me that they didn't think they'd be able to cover their whole area. So the pack that was offering to cover more really went above and beyond because I know how large these different packs are. But it was a super pack. They wanted to do a lot, and so I was able to help them do it. One more complaint that you're going to get from units is, why aren't we covering our home area? We're too far from where the scouts live. And that's a case where, unless there's a safety issue involved, for me, I just ask them, please, to cover the area. It's very difficult with the high density of units that we have in certain areas of the city to let everybody cover their area, because their area is also, two other units' areas. And so usually they're okay with that. And I tell them that, next year, I take note of it and I will, I'll try next year to get them closer to home. Another complaint I'll get is they just can't get to the map. It's somebody that's technically not very knowledgeable, hasn't used Google Maps before. I try to talk them through it or send them emails to help them. But ultimately, last year, for a few people, I just got on a Zoom with them, and I was able to look at their screen, and I walked them through how to get access to the map, how to understand it, and know what their area was. And it was just easier to lead them through it than to try to, on a Zoom where we could see everything together, than to try to do things by email or anything else. So sometimes you just have to hold people's hands. And, our district is a very large district, and I only had to do that with a few people. So hopefully that won't be too much of a burden for you. Another call that I will get is that someone else handed out bags for their assigned area. And this can happen for multiple reasons. The most likely one is that the map changed from the previous year, and the other unit didn't look at the changes, and so they just used last year's maps. And that happened to me in 2022. We figured it out. We talked to the unit, and so for bag drop-off, they'd already done the bags where they weren't supposed to, and I just had the two units coordinate to figure out who was going to pick up those bags. I tried not to get into the middle of that with the large number of units that we have. As much as possible, I try to let the unit leaders solve their own problems, which they're very capable of doing. And that is how New Horizons uses Google Maps to create custom maps and assign the different areas to the units. If you have questions about this, contact in Greater St. Louis Area Council, contact our Scouting for Food chair. You can find the information at stlbsa.org, and that person can either help you or can put you in contact with me. Thank you.